the most dangerous book ever written. They tell you that the good guys always win. They teach you that if you are honest, kind, and fair, the world will reward you. It is a beautiful lie. Manual for those who actually rule the world. It has been banned by the Pope. It has been burned in public squares. It has been called the hand guide of the devil. Yet it was found on the nightstand of Napoleon Bonaparte. It was studied by Stalin. It is whispered about in the boardrooms of the Fortune 500. The author was not a king. He was a failed diplomat, tortured and exiled, writing by candlelight in a farmhouse in Italy. His name was Niccolò Machiavelli, and his crime was not that he was evil. His crime was that he told the truth. He dared to write down the quiet part out loud, that power does not care about morality, that sometimes, to save the kingdom, you must become a monster. Today, we are going to open the forbidden pages of The Prince. We are going to learn why it is better to be feared than loved, why you should never be a sheep among wolves, and how the rules of power haven't changed in half a millennium. Put aside your idealism. It's time to see the world as it really is. 500 years ago, a man sat in a cold, dimly lit study in the countryside of Italy. He was exiled, broke, and disgraced. He had been tortured on the rack, his wrists dislocated, his body broken by the very government he once served. By day, he caught birds and argued with local innkeepers, but at night, he would dress in his old courtly robes, light a candle, and commune with the ancients. He began to write a small pamphlet, a job application really, intended for the Medici family who had tortured him. He never got the job, but he did leave behind a book that would change the course of human history. That man was Niccolò Machiavelli, and the book was The Prince. For centuries, this book has been banned, burned, and called the work of the devil. We use the term Machiavellian to describe someone who is manipulative, deceptive, and evil. We imagine a villain plotting in the shadows. But we are wrong. Machiavelli was not a villain. He was something far more dangerous. He was a realist. Before Machiavelli, philosophers imagined the world as it should be. They wrote about ideal kingdoms, virtuous kings, and moral utopias. Machiavelli looked at the world and said, "Stop dreaming." He looked at the blood on the streets of Florence and realized that ideals do not save nations. Power does. This video is not a guide on how to be evil. It is a guide on how to survive in a world that does not care about your feelings. It is an exploration of the brutal mechanics of power. Welcome to the real world. Part 1. The gap between what is and what should be the core thesis of The Prince can be summarized in one terrifying sentence. A man who wishes to make a profession of goodness in everything must necessarily come to grief among so many who are not good. This is the cold shower that wakes you up. We are raised to believe that if we are honest, kind, and fair, we will be rewarded. Machiavelli says this is a fantasy. He argues that the world is full of predators. If you act like a sheep among wolves, you will be eaten. It is not a possibility. It is a mathematical certainty. Therefore, he argues, a leader, a prince, must learn how not to be good. Notice the phrasing. He doesn't say you must be bad. He says you must possess the capacity to be bad when necessity dictates it. You must have a switch. Think of a surgeon. To save a patient, a surgeon must cut flesh, saw bone, and spill blood. If the surgeon is too kind to cut the skin, the patient dies. Is the surgeon evil? No. He is effective. Machiavelli argues that in politics, in business, and in life, you are often the surgeon. Sometimes, to save the kingdom, you must do things that would be considered immoral in a Sunday school. Part 2. The Lion and the Fox. So, how does a prince survive? Machiavelli offers two animals as totems, the lion and the fox. Most men try to be one or the other. The lion is raw power. It is the army, the authority, the ability to smash your enemies. But a lion cannot see traps. A lion can be easily fooled. The fox is cunning. The fox can spot a trap from a mile away. The fox can negotiate, deceive, and maneuver. But the fox is weak against wolves. Machiavelli writes, "One must be a fox to recognize traps and a lion to frighten wolves." If you are only a lion, if you rely only on your title, your aggression, or your hard work, you will be outsmarted. You will step into a trap set by a subordinate or a rival. If you are only a fox, if you rely only on lies and schemes, you will eventually be cornered by someone simply stronger than you. You must be a hybrid. You must be able to smile in the face of your enemy while holding a dagger behind your back. But you must also be ready to drop the dagger and use the hammer if the situation calls for it. In modern terms, you need the competence to do your job, the lion, and the emotional intelligence to navigate the politics of your office, the fox. One without the other is suicide. Part 3. Is it better to be loved or feared? This is the most famous question in political history. If you had to choose, should your people love you or should they fear you? Ideally, you want both. But Machiavelli warns that these two emotions rarely exist together. So if you must choose, you must choose fear. Why? Because of human nature. Machiavelli had a very low opinion of humanity. He wrote, "Men are ungrateful, fickle, liars and deceivers, avoiders of danger, and greedy for profit. If you build your power on love, you are building on sand. Love is an obligation. People love you when you are giving them things. But the moment times get tough, the moment you need them to sacrifice for you, their love vanishes. They will betray you for their own self-interest. Fear, however, is held in place by the dread of punishment. Fear never fails." But, and this is the part most people miss, Machiavelli makes a crucial distinction. There is a difference between being feared and being hated. You want to be feared. You do not want to be hated. Fear creates discipline. Hate creates rebellion. How do you avoid hatred? It's simple. Keep your hands off their property and their women. Machiavelli's cynicism shines here. He famously says, "A man will sooner forget the death of his father than the loss of his patrimony." You can execute a man's brother, and he might forgive you. But if you steal his inheritance, or his business, or his house, he will hate you forever. People can tolerate a harsh leader. They cannot tolerate a thief. In a management context, be strict. Set high standards. Let there be consequences for failure. That is fear. But do not be petty. Do not steal credit. Do not micromanage. That creates hate. Part 4. The economy of violence. Machiavelli is often accused of promoting cruelty, but he actually argues for the economy of cruelty. He distinguishes between cruelty well used and cruelty poorly used. Thus, the cruelty well used is done all at once. If you take over a company or a country and you need to fire people or cut costs or eliminate rivals, do it immediately. Do it in one stroke, and it will be painful. It will be shocking, but then it is over. The wound can heal. Cruelty, poorly used, is when you try to be nice at first. You fire a few people, then a month later, a few more, then a few more. You are dragging out the pain. This creates a climate of permanent insecurity. It is like cutting off a dog's tail 1 inch at a time to save it from pain. Machiavelli suggests injuries ought to be done all at one time, so that being tasted less, they offend less. Benefits ought to be given little by little, so that the flavor of them may last longer. If you have good news, a raise, a promotion, a reward, drip feed it. Make it last. If you have bad news, deliver it all at once. Part 5. The Mask of Virtue. We judge people by what we see. And Machiavelli understood that perception is reality. He argues that a prince does not need to have all the virtues. mercy, faith, integrity, humanity, and religion. But he must appear to have them. In fact, he says having those virtues constantly can be harmful, but appearing to have them is useful. A leader must look like the most moral person in the room. He must speak of values and ethics. Why? Because the mob, the general public, judges by appearances. Only a few people get close enough to touch the reality, and those few dare not oppose the opinion of the many. This is the darkest pill to swallow. We want to believe that authenticity is the key to success. Machiavelli says authenticity is a liability. The successful leader is a master of the mask. He adapts his personality to the situation. If the wind blows one way, he is pious. If it blows the other, he is ruthless. He is a shapeshifter. Part 6. Fortuna. Finally, Machiavelli addresses the one thing we cannot control: luck, or as he calls her, fortuna. He estimates that half of our actions are governed by fortune, and the other half by our own will. He describes fortune as a violent river. When it floods, it destroys everything in its path. Trees, buildings, people. Nothing can stand against it. Most people look at the river and say, "It is fate. There is nothing I can do." But Machiavelli says, no. When the weather is calm, you build dikes and dams. You dig canals. You prepare so that when the flood comes, and it will come, the water is channeled and it does not destroy you. This is the essence of Machiavellian virtue prowess. It is not moral goodness. It is competence and preparation. You cannot stop the bad luck of a market crash, or a new competitor, or a global crisis. But you can build the dams before the rain starts. A leader who relies entirely on luck is ruined when his luck changes. A leader who relies on preparation survives the storm. Conclusion. The mirror. Why do we still read The Prince 500 years later? It is not because we want to be tyrants. It is because we recognize the world he describes. We see the lion and the fox in our office politics. We see the economy of violence in corporate restructuring. We see the mask on every politician's face on the evening news. Machiavelli didn't invent the game. He just wrote down the rules. You can choose to ignore these rules. You can choose to live by high ideals, always trusting, always honest, always kind. That is a noble choice. But understand the risk. As Machiavelli warned, you are walking among wolves, and if you do not know how they think, you will be their prey. To read The Prince is to look into a dark mirror. It reflects not who we wish we were, but who we actually are when the stakes are high. It teaches us that sometimes, to keep the peace, you must prepare for war. Sometimes, to do good, you must learn how not to be good. And always, you must look at the world with clear eyes, stripped of fantasy. Because in the end, the prince does not seek heaven. He seeks to survive here, on earth. Machiavelli finishes his lesson with a warning. You can choose to ignore these laws. You can choose to live in a fantasy where everyone is good and justice always prevails. But understand this, the wolf does not care about your moral superiority. The wolf only cares that you are edible. Now that you have looked into the mirror, you cannot look away. You now see the strings attached to the puppets. You see the lion and the fox in your boss, your politicians, and your rivals. The question is not whether you agree with Machiavelli. The question is, now that you know the rules of the game, how will you play it? If you want to decode the hidden laws of history, psychology, and power, join us. Subscribe to Chapters and Capitals, because the only thing more dangerous than power is ignorance. Subscribe to the Chapters and Capitals. Thanks for watching. See you in the next video.